Hey everyone, Anime Echoes here. I wanted to talk about the difference between something you watch or read once and something you rewatch or reread. The quality of a story is very important. Now that's a pretty basic understanding, right? Like when you watch something new, you want it to be good. But one of the things I've been noticing is the difference between what kind of stories really stick with me and what kind of stories were like a great experience on the first watch, but then I never had really any incentive whatsoever to go back to it. And that's something that I've been querying like within myself, and also just, when I hear from other people that they're on their, 20th rewatch of a certain show, and then they watch like another show and they say it's incredibly high quality, but it's just not a show that I go back to. I watch like certain like tier ranking videos, and I'll see people ranking certain shows incredibly high, but it's just something that they've watched once. And then for me, like when I'm like ranking something, the rewatchability is also something that I take into consideration when I'm ranking how high quality I think the story is. Now, obviously, anything you rewatch, you're going to consider it to be like high quality, otherwise you wouldn't rewatch it. But the main thing that I want to focus on is that difference of like something that's a really good experience for the first time and that you don't really engage with again, and something that you do rewatch a bunch of times. Yeah, and like what the difference between that is. And the thing that I've noticed is that when you're experiencing a new story for the first time, what's really important are the fundamental parts of just a general story. Just is the plot good, is the characters good, just all that stuff if the first experience is really great. When that's finished, you can be like, okay, that was a great complete experience. I feel like I got a lot out of that. That was like a worthwhile engagement. Now, if this story doesn't have like the aesthetics that I personally prefer, if it doesn't have like character designs that I'm just pulled into, and just generally stuff like that, but also like even story structure based things, in like this previous video that I just put out, I was talking about how I prefer more visual storytelling, so it's like, slower, more movement, those kind of aesthetic based, presentation based things. If it doesn't have those things, I'm far less inclined to actually go back into these stories. Even if I thought the characters were like excellently done, and I have like an emotional attachment to these characters, if I don't feel like the aesthetic presentation of the show itself and the way the show is engaging with me at any given second is like something that I truly feel like I'm drawn to and that I really want to see, I don't really feel myself wanting to rewatch those. Because of that, I'm thinking about all these stories that I think are like well done and that I think are incredibly just well written, with a lot of thought and with a lot of intent that I can very much like sense into. Despite all that, it's just like a good experience, just like a one-time experience, and I'm done, and I just never want to like revisit that world again. And in my mind, I hold it with like high regard as like something great, something impressive. But I hear about like other people having these like experiences with this show that I thought was great, but they're like rewatching it, they're re-engaging with it, which means that there's something about that show that isn't just good, but it's also like for them, and it is aesthetically perfect for their personality, and it matches well with them. It's like the show itself is very compatible with them. And the shows that like I rewatch, it really is to like kind of put myself into like a specific vibe or a specific mood that I prefer. Like X-Files is a good example where I like to just kind of jump into these episodes because I like that vibe of like, detectives finding stuff, and like a lot of like the visual storytelling and just the enemies and all that stuff. Like all of that aesthetically vibes with me. I love Haikyuu because like I just love the art style like so much, especially in the manga. Like I feel like the panel presentation just really works with my personality. All of these like shows, I think they're well done. I think they're incredibly like well written. But I think the thing that actually makes me want to rewatch it or want to re-engage with it isn't just the quality, and it's not even just like the emotional connection I have with these characters. It is the presentation of what it is doing like at any given moment, and how much it actually jives with my personality. And I think my favorite shows, like my favorite shows being like Haikyuu, Boogie Pop, I love the Baccano light novels, Ping Pong the animation. There's just, I consider these all to be like very high quality shows. I think they're all very well written. But the thing that makes me want to just dive back into them is that I love like the world, that I love being in that atmosphere, being in that mood, being with like those characters specifically. Like all these moments, like it's not really like, when I get down to like the root of it, it's not necessarily like a quality thing. It's very much like a preference for like that world, that character, the character dynamics. Like it really is just like, I want to be in this space. And that's what actually constitutes like what I rewatch and what I don't rewatch. And that's one of the reasons why, like in many videos and stuff, like, I've been on this like perspective of like finding things that are for you. And the aesthetic perspective is what kind of helps you find those things that have that like eternal kind of quality to them, where you get to experience them. You'll be naturally motivated to experience them again. You'll be naturally motivated to actually engage with these shows that you've already engaged with, because the world itself is so intriguing to you specifically, because the characters themselves and the way they're done is very intriguing to you. Even like the writing, like not necessarily the writing quality, but like the way the writing is done. And I think this explains a lot of things, because it's like, why there's so many shows that, or so many manga, or whatever the medium is, where the actual quality of the writing, you can tell it's good, you can tell it's well done, but you just don't want to touch it like ever again. You don't want to engage with it ever again. You can tell that the person who made it put their whole foot forward when making this thing, and you enjoyed it the first time, but then it's like, well, I don't really want to engage with this story again. I don't really want to engage with these characters again, because it doesn't, it's not hitting you on that extra subjective aesthetic level that really kind of pulls you in to make you want to revisit it again. Even in those like shows that you really truly love, that you revisit, like you're gonna have favorite episodes that you want to revisit. You're gonna have, like I mentioned in another video, that I had like this entire Word document where I've listed kind of like my favorite episodes of my favorite shows. And when I'm in the mood, I just kind of want to dive into those favorite episodes and just re-experience that whole kind of vibe, just re-experience that again. And having like a list like that just makes it so much easier, and you can just like dive right in and just re-experience like a world that you think is like really great and just worth engaging with, like regardless, you know what I mean? This natural kind of movement towards this thing that you're vibing with, this favorite episode, that the plot, the characters, it has my favorite characters. I just love the focus on this. Like I feel this way about the Haikyuu episode in like the 4th season with like the Mia brothers. Like I just love that episode. I feel like it just, like that backstory episode is just so great. I feel that way about the Shiratorizawa backstory episode, where you see like Tendo and Ushijima's whole like dynamic, and like there's just certain episodes that just really like pull you in, and they they say something about like the kind of stories that you really want to see. But even that like perspective, just to provide the contrary view of this, like you take that too far and you're constantly going to be like, okay, what kind of thing do I want to see? So you're like having to like fragment the story, because like when you're experiencing a story, you're experiencing like the music. Like if it's animation, like you're experiencing the music, the characters, the voices. Like it's this one piece with multiple moving parts. But when you're trying to like figure out like what makes you tick, you do need to first fragment yourself and be like, okay, like is what's pulling me in the aesthetic? Is that what's pulling me in? Is what's pulling me in like the music? Is it the characters? You have to go on this like self-exploring journey in order to find your taste. But in order to do that, you have to like break it apart and figure it out piece by piece, because our minds aren't really good at like just taking something as a whole and being like, oh yeah, it's because of that. No, you have to actually like be able to find a like, in order to find that sense of consistency in like your taste, you have to actually be able to just break down the thing that you're vibing with and be like, what specifically is affecting me, what specifically is influencing me. Now that's a really great thing, and I love doing that personally. Like I'm constantly trying to like just figure out like what do I actually want out of a story, and wanting to define myself in that way. But the issue with that is, well, when you put all the pieces together, when you put the music and you put the aesthetics and you put the characters, the dialogue, all of that together, and you're experiencing like an animated show or a manga, like that doesn't have voice acting and stuff, but there's still multiple things going on at once. Like when you experience that, the whole is like kind of greater than the sum of its parts. So you might like this genre, like this aesthetic, and that can be a problem when you're engaging with something new, because you might have already mentally convinced yourself that it's not for you, because you're like, I like these kinds of things, I enjoy these kinds of this kind of aesthetic, I enjoy these kinds of characters. Like that can also kind of narrow you in and make you mentally convinced that trying out this new story is also like a waste of time, when when that story is like holistically presented to you, it's actually something that you would enjoy just as like a one-time thing, right? Because like watching something for like one time is also a pretty good experience. Not everything has to be like this eternal transformational thing where you're like, okay, I'm supposed to find this thing, like I'm so grateful I found this thing. Like I do think it's like a solution to like the overconsumption issue, absolutely, with like people consuming like a crap ton of stuff that they don't even want to consume. That is true, being very intentional. But on the flip side, when you take that perspective like way too far, like what ends up happening is that you will dismiss things that you actually maybe should engage with. Because if you take that perspective too far, you'll literally run out of things to like find and engage with, which will also cause problems as well. Because it'll feel like, well, I can't really find the thing that I'm looking for, because it's going to be rare. When you're really defining your taste, it's going to be harder to find that special thing, because that's what you're doing. So even then, like, kind of loosening that grip on, this is who I am, this is my tastes, can also allow you to engage with things that you might not have previously considered to be something that you should engage with. And I think the best way, in my opinion, to do this is to kind of just open that valve like just a little bit, because if you open it too much, you're going to go back to like over consuming, and that's just not a good thing. But if you open it like a little bit, then something new can arise, and it might not be that eternal thing, but it's still just a good experience. Like not every experience has to be something that you rewatch, right? Not everything has to be like your number one. So I think it kind of depends on like where you are like in your journey, like of like watching TV shows, watching media, all that stuff. Of like, are you currently in your arc where you're trying to figure out like whether you're over consuming and that you need to not over consume as much, and you have to be like more particular and more distinct with your preferences and what you actually want to see? Or are you in the part of your life where you've done that and you've really kind of like defined some things, and now you're kind of realizing that you've taken that perspective a bit too far, and you need to kind of open up a bit more to see what to see what comes from that, because you've already kind of I wouldn't say conquered the game of overconsumption, but you've you've kind of just gone later in that level, and then you're seeing like the error of taking that other perspective too far as well. So I think like from my point of view, I don't see like the act of watching like a TV show or watching anime or watching reading manga or anything as like this thing where you can't like self-develop in relation to it. Like I think you absolutely can. Like I don't see it as just something, it's not just like this pleasurable act, because of course it's pleasurable, but like you can also like learn a lot like about yourself, and how you might like take a kind of perspective in relation to media like too far, and just see what happens then, and that can also be like a life lesson for you. So I feel like all this stuff that we're kind of engaging with and talking about are ripe for certain kinds of light bulb moments, just about how you engage with things within your life. And I think it actually travels to like different portions of your life. So for example, being more particular about like how you consume things, when you truly get that, you start being more particular about other things in your life as well, whether it's like clothing, friendship, like just anything that you care about. You'll see the value in like not over consuming and being particular. And on the other end, if you do things way too particular and you see yourself just narrowed to like a pinpoint, and that's kind of like screwing you over, when you open yourself up, you'll also like open yourself up in like other areas of your life, because I feel like that's just how things work. So yeah, anyway, like this entire conversation, I really just wanted to kind of like highlight that dichotomy between finding a new story that you really enjoy, but it just isn't like that thing that's gonna grip you fully, like it's not the thing that you're gonna come back to, and how that's actually like a worthwhile like experience, and how finding that number one thing is also simultaneously a worthwhile experience. Like they're both worthwhile, just in like a different way. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that kind of discussion just about that, and keen to hear what you guys' thoughts are, and hope you guys enjoyed. All right.